Good morning, everybody. Long time no see. Nothing. Sounded funnier in my head. How are y'all doing this morning? Thank you so much, Kim, for leading us in that time of worship. Really appreciated it. Now some of you slipped in your after announcements. If any of you are visiting here, I hope you feel very welcome. I hope on this Christmas, New Year's, in-between time, you feel like you are welcome. This is a safe family place for you to be. My name is Jason Klassen. And, we're starting into a new year, and I kind of have a tradition, I don't know, maybe a 4-year tradition so far for New Year's here at the Open Door Church, in that I like to take the time to look back and look forward and kind of pause at this middle time. I really like the Christmas, I like when there's a Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, somewhere in there. Because I feel like it's this like twilight zone. You're sort of done with 2017, but 2018 hasn't officially started yet. And you can kind of pause, stop, take stock, plan forward, look back, all at the same time. And I like to make good use of this time. I think setting goals, I think walking towards your plans and your purposes, try to find out what God has for you, and understanding that, I find that deeply valuable in becoming who we're meant to be and becoming who we want to be. So much of our life, and maybe it's just me, maybe this doesn't at all apply to you guys, but so much of my life, I feel, is sometimes lived a bit on default, right? You move one day to the next, your weeks sort of maybe have a similar plan, whatever. You have a rhythm to life, and you can easily fall into that rhythm. And I find Christmas breaks that rhythm dramatically and comes with its own new set of rhythms and challenges. And then the new year begins right afterwards, and it's in this time of almost like our habits and our rhythms are in weakness. There's like a chink in their armor. And at this moment, these weeks, sometimes we can speak into those rhythms, a new rhythm, a new life, a new health, a new plan, a new purpose. And so I like to do that now at this New Year's time. I remember, 2009. That's actually a long time ago already. Then Destiny and I flew to Italy. It was a beautiful vacation. It was still by far, I think, our best vacation we ever had. We took almost 3 weeks in Italy. You really can't go wrong at that sort of thing. But the thing that just kind of jumped out at me this week was on the planes. It was I can't actually remember what airline we flew from. We flew from New York to Venice, though, on that airline. It's about an 8.5-hour flight. I can't remember what airline we were on, but they had the little GPS thing on those screens on the back of the seat. I don't know, are you familiar with this? You can kind of follow along. It's like Flight Aware or Flight Tracker or something it's called. And it's like the GPS of where precisely your plane is over the ocean. And that's kind of what I got to see. I like to follow it along with that. Here's the thing. New York, and it was actually New York and Naples, are on the exact same latitude. New York and Venice are like almost the same latitude. Of course, Venice is a lot warmer because of the warm Mediterranean currents, the water currents flowing nearby, but they're actually almost precisely the same latitude. But here's what I found interesting. We didn't fly straight. So if you could throw up that first slide, Saul, you can see that New York, go back one. New York is on the left there. Rome you can see on the right. You can't really see Venice. It's a little bit above that. And so a straight line, you can see that latitude line right below it almost exactly bisects it. And so that would be a straight flight. If I was looking at a map and planning a flight, I would say that's where you're going, right? Because the most expensive part of a flight is the airplane time, the fuel, and your costs for your flight crew. So you want to minimize your time in the air. If you minimize your time in the air, you're maximizing your income. So I look at that and I go, I don't have some big fancy business degree, but a straight line is going to be the fastest way between New York and Venice, right? But here's the approximation of the flight we did fly. Giant arc. And that's a little bit over-exaggerated there. We didn't fly quite as high as Ireland, but we were almost as far in the latitude as London. So what gives, right? That's substantially longer. That's like 20-ish% longer a flight. Now, I understand that trade winds can blow certain ways at certain altitudes or whatever, so it might pay to move out of your way one way or the other, but that actually has nothing to do with why we flew that route. That has nothing to do with why we didn't fly a straight route. Because did you know that is a straight route? That is the red line is a straight route, the blue line is a curved line. Am I blowing your minds? It's a little trick of non-Euclidean geometry. But here's the deal. This is what happens. I remember I was driving. It's the same sort of thing. as I drove to the East Coast a couple of years ago, and it was middle of the night. I'd never been, basically anywhere east in Canada of Kenora, I don't think. So I'm driving through Canada to the East Coast. I've been everywhere in the States, but not in Canada. And I was bypassing Montreal. We were trying to take the whatever road number, I can make up a number, but I don't remember, around Montreal. And I took a wrong turn, a wrong merge lane, whatever, and all of a sudden I'm on the bridge going on to Gatineau Island, which is not where I want to be, because it's like this smaller residential urban-y sort of thing. And so I get onto Gatineau Island, I want to turn around, take the bridge back out, and continue on down, right? Maybe a 10-minute detour, no biggie, right? So I'm by this little building, and I can see the bridge, right? Because the bridge is huge. It's over the St. Lawrence. It's this big, tall, massive bridge, easy to see. And so I'm going, well, there's the bridge. So I started driving towards the bridge. But as I got close to the road, there was this concrete barricade, maybe, 8, 10 feet high. So, okay, I turned, logically, towards the bridge. And I keep kind of driving on this little access road beside the concrete barricade. And the barricade keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And I'm going, well, there's the bridge. I'm getting closer to the bridge. Finally, I ended up right at the very base of the bridge. But by now, the concrete barricade's almost 20 feet high. And I'm thinking, I don't think I can jump my vehicle up this barricade. See, if I would have had a 2D map, if I would have had a top-down map, I would have seen the entrance to the bridge was about a quarter mile back. And that all of this ramp was building up for the giant arc of the bridge, right? This is totally normal. We've all seen this before. You can't always get to where you want to go directly. Sometimes you have to go back a little ways to get to where you want to get to. And if I would have had a 2D map, it would have been super easy to see this. I would have seen where my entrance was. I would have seen where the bridge was. I would have easily followed it. Well, the same sort of thing, the same sort of logic is at play here, but because the distances are longer, there's a new little conundrum. That is a 2D map. And when I was on that Flight Aware or whatever that was, the back of the seat behind me on the plane, I was looking at a two-dimensional, flat representation of the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know if you know this. I'm thinking I'm about to blow your minds. The Earth is not flat. Audible gasps were heard all around. Despite what a couple of websites might tell you, or that email from that crazy uncle says, the Earth is not flat. It is a round ball. Very approximately. It's an oblate spheroid, technically, but it's round for all intents and purposes. And so, if you would see that exact same flight plan on a globe, what you would realize is the blue line is curved. The blue line curves way out of the way, and the red line is the most direct route. If you take a string, and you would follow the red line of the string from New York to Venice, and then you tried to stretch that over that blue line, you wouldn't have enough. The blue line's longer. Because here's the deal. The Earth is round, and so it bulges way out between New York and Venice. And so if you follow that straight latitude, you would take a much longer, about a 20% longer flight than if you follow with the curve of the Earth, and you follow the red map. And it becomes super obvious on a globe. But it's not obvious on a 2D map. On a 2D map, you're looking at that, you're going to take the wrong route. You're going to take the longer route. You're going to waste fuel. You're going to waste your cruise flight hours. You're going to waste your airtime on your plane. You're going to waste everything because that is a longer route, even though it doesn't look longer. And thankfully, oddly enough, all of the airlines use computers and maps and so on that are rounded, that model a rounded Earth. So it's very easy for them to calculate the right flight plan. See, if you don't have the right map, it makes the journey extra hard. Am I tracking with you all here? If I don't have the right 2D map on short distances, I can't even get from a road to a bridge I can see. And if I only have a 2D map but I don't have a proper, more detailed 3D map, I can't plan flight paths. Because I don't know how to use a compass and a pencil to make a hyperbola on a flat plane that connects New York to Venice. But on a globe, it's easy. You can just hold a string. But the illusion is persistent, isn't it? It sure looks like that red line is longer, doesn't it? I mean, I'm thinking many of you believe me that on a globe, the red line's the faster route. I'm thinking that nobody's doubting me that the red line, it's called, in fact, the Great Circle Route. Anytime you make this sort of line, a pilot or a flight planner would call it the Great Circle Route. I think you all believe me, and yet the illusion is persistent. That red line looks longer. Real money and real jobs are on the line with airlines, so they don't care about just their end goal. They also care about how they're going to get to their end goal. The journey, the route, is every bit as important as the end goal. Knowing Venice isn't enough. They also have to know what the proper route is. See, we see what we see. We look at that flat map, and we see a flat map. And it's hard to imagine the world as a round globe. And the persistent illusion tells us this isn't the correct journey. No matter how much we believe in our head, it is the correct journey. We know in our head it's the better way, but when it comes to it, I think, put simply, we think we know better. You know in your head that the red line is the right journey, but it's really hard to get rid of that feeling in you that the blue line is the correct line, isn't it? Am I the only one who looks at that and goes, that blue line looks like a better route? Every single time. We tend to be pretty good at setting end goals. We tend as a species, as a church, as a family here in Morris to be pretty good at setting end goals. And we tend to be rottenly terrible. I can't over-exaggerate how bad as a society we are at figuring out how to achieve those end goals. We are monstrously terrible at the journey. But we're pretty good at knowing where we want to get to. When people come to me with a problem, as a pastor, I'm pretty quick to ask some variation of this question. How do you want this to look? Maybe in a perfect world. What are you shooting for? What's your goal? If you could wave a magic wand and make this right, what would right be to you? Because I learned early on that sometimes what I'm trying to help someone achieve and what they came to me to achieve are different things, right? So I want to know what the person's goal is. And I would say 90+% of the time, their end goal is logical, it is smart, it is healthy, it is right, it is proper. Lots of people, if there's conflict in their marriage, they'll say they want a healthier, happier marriage. They want an easy-going relationship with their spouse. They want deep, real intimacy. And I'm going, yeah, that's amazing. How many people go about it in a right way? There's probably about 100 wrong ways to try to fix a marriage and only a very few right ways. And we definitely have a tendency to pick the wrong ways, don't we? Yelling the other person down, guilting them so they just don't talk about it. That's a great one. Just don't talk about it. The problem goes away if you don't talk about it, right? It's like you're not lost if you don't know where you want to get to, right? So if you just don't talk about it, you don't have a problem in your marriage or at your job or with your kids. Or if you're the authoritative figure and you can just rule everybody else down, you can just yell or bully or glare or whatever and shut the conversation down. Or if you can somehow convince yourself it's the other person's fault, well, then you don't have anything to do. Then you just fixed your problem, right? And there's 1,000 other ways where we convince ourselves or we kill our end goal because we weren't prepared for the journey. We wanted to take the shortcut on the journey and we wrecked our end goal even though the end goal was good. Are you tracking with me on this? The journey matters, and we're very good at picking our end goals, and we're very bad at planning and sticking to our journey. We can usually figure out where we want to get to, but we tend to fall down in figuring out the best way to get there. So it's almost January. Tomorrow, in fact, tonight it becomes January. It's the time of New Year's resolutions, which also means it's time for another shot of depressing statistics. It's true. It's true. So, about a quarter of you, 26% of you, will make a resolution to lose weight or eat healthier, statistically. And we've got a large enough group of people here in this church that statistics will bear out. So about a quarter of you, right now, or yesterday, or tomorrow, we're thinking about losing weight or eating healthier. That's pretty good. So if we have a church of about 280 people here on a regular everyday Sunday, it's cold today, it's a bit lower, but 280, that means about 70 of you want to lose weight or eat healthier. 70. So you're in good company, and way to go. Post-Christmas, I think we could all use a little bit of healthier eating. Now for the fun part. Statistically speaking, only 8% of you will achieve it. 8%. That means somewhere between 5 and 6 out of 280 people are actually going to lose weight or eat healthier. But these stats are not year dependent. That means they were true last January, just like they're true this January. And that means that there are something in the neighborhood of 74, 75 of you sitting here today who failed this year. I should start a motivational speaking tour. You're all failures last year, and you'll be failures next year probably too. Woo! But you're in good company because most of the people around you failed too. Very few of you succeeded. 8% out of 26% who even tried. And I'll give it to them. The 26% who tried, at least they tried. The other people didn't even choose something. So you're in good company if you failed. But you don't have to fail, right? Am I the only one who doesn't believe it should be inevitable, statistically irrelevant success? That this should be a real thing that we can actually do. And I don't care so much about losing weight. I care about any of the goals we set, any of the things we put our mind to. Shouldn't it be possible to succeed? Really possible, like not fringe statistics possible. Shouldn't it be a thing that if we set our mind to something, we should be able to do it? I mean, why do we fail? I noticed as soon as I said only 8% would succeed, I got a whole lot more attention suddenly. Apparently some of you are sensitive about your weight. Stand up if you're sensitive about your weight. Bunch of liars. I was the only one standing. Well, Jack was standing. Jack and I were standing. I don't believe we fail at our end goals, whether they're weight loss related, healthy marriage related, whether they're better relationships with kids, happier job, more joy in our lives, more free time, better rest for ourselves. That's a big one. A lot of people want to rest. They feel they're too busy. They recognize they're too busy, right? Especially post-Christmas when it gets kind of crazy. We recognize that. We want to just take some time to chill, right? I don't believe we're failing because we lack willpower. That's a common one. Motivational speakers will talk about how we lack willpower. I actually don't think so. Because when there's an obstacle in our way, I find people are pretty good at getting that obstacle out of the way. That takes willpower. When there's a stumbling block, when there's something clear and definitive in front of us, I find people are actually kind of bulldozers. They really push through. And that's really what willpower is, isn't it? So I don't think it's willpower that's kneecapping us. But we're still making goals and we're failing. And we calculate the best way to fly there. It's like that New York to Rome journey. We calculate our end goal, and we calculate what we think is the best way to fly there. Only to find it taking far longer, being far harder, and far less successful than we thought. So I don't believe it's willpower. I don't believe that some people just have it. You hear that some people, they just got it. And then you never define what it is. I think that's garbage. I think we all can actually achieve our end goals if we want to. I don't believe that some people are lucky. I've heard this one. Well, I guess it was just her year to break through and exercise. I don't know what that means. Like God rolled a dice and you got a 5 and somebody else got a 6, so it was their year to, like, I don't understand this whole thing. These are the things that people say. It was just his year. Just had more willpower. I actually don't believe any of that is true. So what do I think is the problem? I think our problem with achieving our end goals is the same problem we have when we're driving, when we're planning flights all over the world. You can't get to where you want to go if you don't have the right map. If you don't have the right map, you can't plan your journey. And if your map of your life, of your world, of your friends, of your family is wrong, if you're seeing the world through skewed eyes, what you think is a straight path is the long, detoured off-road path that's going to probably make you fail. As you view the world around you, yourself, inside, your spouse with right eyes, when you see your spouse with the right eyes, you will know how to make your marriage better. But if you see your spouse with the wrong eyes, you can't fix nothing. If I want to change a belt or an alternator on my Jeep, and I have the wrong manual, I won't find what I'm looking for, will I? And if I do, it'll be trial and error and guess and check. And it's going to be slow and cumbersome, and I hate mechanical work anyway, so I'll probably just bring it to someone else. I think so many of us are going through life with the wrong map. we're not seeing the world through God's eyes. And God actually tells us this. He warns us ahead of time. He says, whoa, before you plan your journey, before you just run headlong towards your end goals, you need to see the world differently. You need a revelation. There's even a book called Revelation. In fact, we're reading Psalms 16, verse 11. God says, or David says about God, you reveal, you open the eyes of my heart, of my mind, for the path of life to me. You reveal the path of life to me. There is a path. I've talked about the principle of the path before, right? It's your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. You get to where you want to get to because you're walking that way, not because you wished to get there. But the journey isn't always obvious. You reveal the path of life to me. Your presence is abundant joy. In your right hand are eternal pleasures. The path of life is not obvious. The path of your life isn't obvious. You're living an obscured path. You can't see clearly. You don't have God's eyes. You don't see yourself the way God sees you. You don't see your spouse the way God sees your spouse. You don't know who your kids are the way God knows who your kids are, because he's the creator and sustainer of everything. You don't know why you don't have joy in your life. You don't know why you stress eat when you're upset. You don't know why you can't go to the gym or whatever your plan is, because you don't have God's eyes. And if you did, it would be obvious. It would be as obvious as turning that red and blue line onto a globe and going, oh my goodness, the red line is better. It would be that obvious. It'd be like a light switch. But we only know it as much as God reveals it to us. And if we try in human wisdom, we try in vain, randomly guessing at about 8%. We fail. But you don't have to. Because David said, God, you reveal. You actually want to open my eyes to see the world and to see you the way you see. But in Proverbs, I love Proverbs, it's so blunt. Proverbs 14, verse 12. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. Look, when man plans what man thinks is best, you end in death and failure. When man gets God's eyes and sees the way God sees, we end in success. We maybe know where we want to get to, but we don't know how we want to get there. We know in our head there's a better way, but when it comes to it, we really think we know better, don't we? So I want to take a little verse section from Proverbs 3, 5 to 12. I want to just break this down a little bit as we see what God is saying. Unpack kind of line by line the concepts God's revealing to us in Proverbs. So if you want to turn with me or watch on the screen, Proverbs 3, 5 to 12. Verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understanding. Now, we've all heard this verse before, seen it on fridges or on calendars or something like that. Eagle flying over a canola field, and it says, trust in the Lord. Do not lean on your own understanding. You have an understanding, but by default, it's skewed, it's wrong, it's twisted. It's not that simple. There are things we cannot understand, and we need a higher dimensional understanding. Your little 2D map won't work. Think about him in all your ways, and he will guide you on the right paths. There are right paths for you. There is an actual journey God has for you. There is a way to get to where you need to get to. There is a right path, but we need to rely on God, not our own understanding, in all our ways. Don't consider yourself to be wise. Next time somebody gives you advice, just give them Proverbs 3, verse 7. Don't consider yourself to be wise. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Look, it's easy to think we see clearly. It's easy. It's hard when we're looking at those red and blue lines to realize we're the ones who are seeing wrong. Looking at a 2D map, it's so obvious what the right path is. But looking at a 3D map shows you the truer world version. It's only when we see from God's perspective that the truth that was obvious to God the whole time becomes obvious to us. So then we get a little example of what this looks like. It says in verse 8, this will be healing for your body and strengthening for your bones. So that's wonderful. It says, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first produce of your entire harvest. Then your barns will be completely filled and your vats will overflow with new wine. Now this sounds odd. Suddenly he's talking about tithing and giving in the midst of this verse about not leaning on your own understanding. But here's what's happening. God gives us these verses about not leaning on understanding, not using our own human eyes, but trusting in God's eyes. And then he also says, and here's the thing about tithing. When you give, you're actually blessed. Here's what he's doing. It's an example. It's a case study. From a human understanding, if you want more, if you want to be full, if you want to feel safe and secure, if you want to feel like you have enough, you keep what you have. You don't give it away, right? I earned $10. I want $100 eventually. Well, $10 is 1/10 of the way there. I'll keep it. 10 more of these and I'm done. And God says, no, you give $1 away and you keep 9, or whatever it is you're giving away. He says, look, in God's kingdom, from God's perspective, from the higher dimensional viewpoint, when you give, you actually are blessed. You get safety and security and fullness in your life. Your barns will be full and your vats filled with new wine as you give of your first fruits and possessions. This is counterintuitive. This isn't world wisdom. This is godly wisdom. And he's not saying that's the only example. God's giving it as an example. See, look, here's how this works. You don't understand how this works, but as you give, you'll find it to be true. The Bible's full of these things, these counterintuitive. In fact, there's like a dozen books that talk about God's upside-down kingdom. Throws everything on its head. The first will be last and will be servants of all. Give, and it will be given to you, a good measure, tamped down and overflowing. These are the kinds of random, impossible to understand things that become very obvious once we have God's eyes. Do not despise the Lord's instructions, my son, and do not loathe his discipline. It's hard and it's sucky sometimes. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, just as a father, the son he delights in. C.S. Lewis has what is, in my opinion, my favorite quote. I think of it very often because I'm an impetuous kind of guy. I'm impulsive. I move fast. I do things quickly. I like to get things done. I'm very focused. And that's great sometimes, and it can be really handicapping sometimes. And so I very often remind myself of the C.S. Lewis quote, sometimes the quickest way forward is the longest way around. Sometimes taking the long route is quicker than the quick route. Sometimes what looked straight on your map is the worst path, and you need to take God's longer path. And actually, in light of that, I want Jackie Thiessen to come up. She's got a little story to share, which I think demonstrates this very clearly.
Just last month, George and I were coming back from a trip, and my plan was I was driving from Hearst, and I just wanted to get to Nipigon. That was my route. And as I'm driving, I have my music on, and I hear this beep, beep, beep. So I shut my radio off, and I'm looking, and I hear this beep, beep, beep. So I look at my gauges, and I see that my voltage is down to 12. So I pedal to the metal, praying, God, please let me get to Long Lac. Long Lac is about 1,000 kilometers from Winnipeg. It is 3 hours east of Thunder Bay. So it's a long ways away. So, and to stop on the shoulders in Ontario is bad. You just can't stop anywhere because there's no shoulders. You need to get to your destination. My destination was being interrupted as far as I thought. So I just kept praying, Lord, please, please let me get to Long Lac, not knowing that this was his plan all along. I pulled up onto the service road into Long Lac. I woke George up and said, there's a problem. We have no bolts in the truck. He opens the hood, and then the serpentine belt had broken. So we get out of the truck and walk to this little gas station, which George said they probably won't have this belt because this is for a semi-truck, and they don't usually carry parts for semis. We get in there. The guy says, no, we do not have your belt. But there's a phone number you can call and call this shop just in the town, and maybe they can help you. So I get the number, and I'm ready to leave, and George is there, sit down. And I'm there, no, let's go. And he goes, sit down and make the call from here. So it's like, okay. So I pull up my phone, and in walks this lady. And then she's there, can I help you? And then George said, well, you don't have this belt. And she goes, no, but Rain Doors is down the street, which is too far to walk, probably has the belt. So she says, come with me, I'll take you there. So George goes back to the truck. I hop in the van with this lady, and we start chit-chatting on the way to Rain Doors. What happens is she tells me that her husband, Roger, is sick and has been taking chemo treatments. And she says to me, where are you heading? And I said, well, Winnipeg. And so she says, you live in Winnipeg? And I usually just say yes, because it's an easier answer than saying describing where we live. This time I said, no, I actually live in Rosenort. And she says, I've heard of Rosenort. And I thought, get out of here. Like, Longlac to Rosenort is too far. And then she says, I know of somebody that lives in a small town in Winnipeg. And then she's there, Leclaire, and I'm there, Leclaire. And then I said, Renee and Colette Leclaire? And she goes, no. And then I'm there, Maurice and Vivian Leclaire? And she says, yes. And she says, Vivian goes to a different church. And I said, yeah, I know. I just said I attend the same church we did for the longest time. And she said, I just wish I could get a note to her and to let her know that Roger is not doing well. I'm there, you know what? I have a paper and pen, a notepad and pen in my purse. You can write her a note. I said, she lives 10 minutes away. I will deliver this note when I get back to Winnipeg. And, of course, Vivian is not home. I get a hold of Colette, and I eventually got the message to Vivian that to call Roger. I did end up calling Florence the next day. The note, I couldn't just give Vivian the note over, it took a while to get the note, because the note was written in French. So I just wrote the note and I, got the message anyway to Vivian. And Vivian ended up calling Roger, and also I ended up calling this lady back and asking her if it would be okay as if a church, if we could pray for her and Roger. And so she said yes. So my plan was Nipigon. And also that night there was freezing rain, and black ice. So it's just amazing how God works within us, and how my plans were from A to B, and his plans were from A to X, and then to B. So God is so good that he protected us that night from freezing rain, black ice, and it was a 12-hour delay, but it's just incredible to see how God works within our lives of bringing us full circle around.
Thank you very much there, Jackie. We're going to take a time as a church. You can sit down if you'd like to, because we're going to take some time as a church now, just 2-3 minutes. And we're going to play for Roger and Florence. That's their names. We're going to pray for them. Roger's going through some cancer treatment, some chemotherapy stuff. And I don't believe that was an accidental detour. I don't believe in coincidences like that. I believe that was God rerouting George and Jackie for a very specific purpose. So we're going to do our part, and we're going to embrace God's creative detours. And so if you just want to gather together, groups 3, 4, 5, whatever, we're just going to pray for Roger and Florence for a few minutes. Thank you, guys. Keep Roger and Florence in your prayers throughout the coming week. We all know it's a hard road to walk. So, why are you here? Why are you here in church at the Open Door in Morris? What are you hoping to get out of being here? Because you could have slept in. You didn't have to start your car at minus 33 or 4 or whatever it is. You didn't have to plug it in last night. You didn't have to be here. Nobody made you. You didn't have to sit in these great chairs and hang out together. So why are you here? What are you trying to get out of this? What are you hoping to accomplish? And there's probably a lot of different answers right now. And some of you, the answer might be, I don't know, or because they made me. Those are valid reasons. But I think for many of you, it's going to be a little different. I think for many of you, it might be some variation of maybe curiosity. Maybe you want to get to know God. Maybe you want to know what God's purpose is in your life. I hear that a lot. I don't know why I'm here or what I'm supposed to do. Looking for meaning in life. Maybe you want to understand deeper what that meaning is or how God plans to fulfill a meaning towards you. Maybe life doesn't make sense to you right now because of disease or illness or death or divorce or hurt or whatever. Life makes no sense, and you think God might make sense. It's the reason why a lot of people are in church. Maybe you feel like Jesus is your only shot to save your marriage or to save your finances, or maybe to save your life, your purpose, your meaning, why you're put on this earth. Unity with God, sense of purpose, all that sort of stuff, closer knit family. Maybe you want to have the kind of relationship with your wife and kids that you saw your parents or your grandparents or your aunt and uncle or whatever had, and you want that too, and you think maybe this Jesus has something to do with it. There's a lot of reasons why you're in church. I encourage you to actually ask yourself why you're here. But here's the thing. Here's the thing we can learn. You statistically have an 8% chance of getting there if you keep using your default map. You will not get there. You will not understand your greater purpose. You will not understand why God put you here. You will not achieve greater unity with your spouse or better health and relationship with your kids if you keep using the same flawed map you've been using for all your other resolutions. You will fail. Woo! Oh, happy day. Man, I don't think 8% are good enough odds that I'm going to gamble on that. But you don't have to. Lord, reveal to me the right paths, right? This can be revealed to you. It might take time. The path won't necessarily be obvious. The path you think you need to walk on needn't be the right path. The path from New York to Rome wasn't straight. It was curved, and it was faster. This is the sort of logic we have to understand. Sometimes the quickest way forward is the longest way around. The right path isn't always obvious, but it can be known. We can know there's a better way. So, Psalms 4:26-27. I like this. This is my mantra for the year. Carefully consider the path for your feet. You stand right now on the precipice of a crossroad. You stand right now in your life on the very, very edge and even almost past the edge of 2018. You're almost there. A new year, a new plan, a new you, a new whatever. God says, listen, carefully consider the path of your feet. Where do you want to put your feet? Because your default sucks. Your default worldview, whatever, is going to lead you to garbage. And you know this. You've done this before. You've lived a year on default, and it sucked. Carefully consider the path of your feet. Choose. Don't go by default. Pick and choose. Not just your end goal, the path of your feet. It doesn't say carefully consider your destination. That kind of assumes you've carefully considered your destination. It says carefully consider the path of your feet. And all your ways will be established. I love when there's a promise in there. If you carefully consider the path of your feet, you'll get where you want to get to. Your ways will be established. Don't turn to the right or to the left. Keep your feet away from evil. Carefully consider the path of your feet. That's what we're doing this morning. But I don't want to just do it this morning, because this morning is an irrelevant drop in the bucket compared to the rest of your life. This has to be more than just a one morning thing, which is why there is a challenge that's a part of the sermon that's beyond just this morning. You see, because God will reveal the path of his life to us. So we have started this Bible reading plan, because if God's going to reveal something to us, might it not be in the thing he's written directly to us, for us, and with us? God can reveal to you his eyes in his Bible. God can show us his heart. God can show us his character. God can show us his plans and his purpose. God can show us the right way. God can show us the counterintuitive way, the way where we give and somehow are blessed, the way where we serve and somehow rise in leadership, the way where we treat others as we want to be treated or even better than ourselves, and that we're treated better for it. The way where we love and pray for our enemies and forgive them, and somehow we're released from bondage. Transformational stuff. It's all in God's Bible. It's a master plan. And it works. It really works. So this year, I want to challenge every last one of you to read the Bible in a year with us. Understand the whole context. You might have read all of the Bible or most of the Bible or whatever in pieces, verses here, verses there, some stuff. That's wonderful, but there's something different when you get everything in context of the great big whole. You begin to see not just your little piece of the map on one day, a little piece, but you begin to see the whole picture through the year. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to read the Bible in a year. It's really simple. And you know what? It doesn't even take that much time in a day. I almost wish this was harder so I could challenge you more. You read a bit in Genesis, you read a bit in Matthew. And the next day you read a bit in Genesis, you read a bit in Matthew. Like, this is not like rocket science. And here's the thing. Some of you have already talked to me about this. Some of you mean to talk to me about this. Some of you are too shy to talk to me about this. But some of you don't believe, in fact, many of you don't believe you can read and understand the Bible. You're going, I'm going to have a year where I'm supposed to commit to reading gibberish. Yea, though he went down to the valley of the shadow of Bethsaida, then therefore he went. What does that mean, right? That's how many of you feel, right? It just feels like some weird Greek, Hebrew gibberish. I don't believe that. I believe actually the Bible is very accessible. I believe there are pieces of the Bible that are difficult. I believe there are pieces of the Bible that are challenging, but I think most of it is really accessible. It's a family history. You get to read about people who screwed up and people who succeeded in the Old Testament. Stories. This happened and this happened. This guy went here and he did really good, and God was happy with how this king responded. This guy did really poorly, and you can see why. Here's the story. This isn't actually that complicated. You read about the prophets as they foretell what God would do in the New Testament, and his father heart is for us. You can read about the laws, and here's the deal. The vast majority of the Old Testament laws don't directly apply in a word-for-word way to us anymore because we live under the New Testament covenant. But the Old Testament laws still speak to God's heart. His heart never changed. So it's like if some kid tells you, well, at my house, I'm not allowed to have a cookie until I finish my full supper or whatever it is. And, you know, in my house, that's kind of true. Hannah can't have a cookie until she finishes supper. But sometimes I can because I made them. But if I have too many, then I'll probably get fat. So I'm careful with how many I have. It's not like my heart changes and I'm like making up random rules. The Old Testament is filled with God's laws for people, and they were very specific. But the heart is the same. When God says in the Old Testament, don't eat shellfish and animals with cloven hooves and do this and don't do that with food, those are very specific rules. We don't have to follow them. But they speak to God's heart that I care about what you put into your body, your food and your drink. It matters. Be conscious of this. Not on the specific minutia of the rules like in the Old Testament, but it's still there. So in the New Testament, what Paul says is, whatever you eat or drink, do so to the glory of the Lord. And if what you're eating or drinking is a stumbling block to your brother, don't do it. So if you have a friend who's an alcoholic and you don't mind having a drink now and again, don't drink in front of him or her. That's just rude. It's a stumbling block. Hey, this isn't rocket science. We make this more complicated than it needs to be. We make this highfalutin sometimes. We're just going to read the Bible in a year. If something bothers you, you know what we're going to do? I'll tell you what we won't do. There's two things we won't do. Number one, we won't put it in the miscellaneous drawer. You know that miscellaneous drawer? It used to be always below your phone when we had phones like tied to a wall. Now I don't know where your miscellaneous drawer, but you had a miscellaneous drawer with that one AA battery where you don't remember where the partner is and you're not sure if it's full or not. And that button from the shirt where the button ripped off, and now it's in your drawer, and the lighter where there's no gas in it anymore, and you just have in the drawer, and that 1999 Nokia mobile flip phone that you just slid in that drawer and never picked up again. You all have that drawer, right? Some of you were wondering why I broke into your house and started taking inventory yesterday. You know what I'm talking about. We don't put verses that trouble us or confuse us in that drawer and forget about them. They're there, they're real, and all Scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and guiding. Okay, here's what we also don't do. We don't hug it really close and let it bother us at night. That's the other thing people do. We go, oh, that verse seems really traumatic and scary, and then we get really bothered by it and it starts to wreck our faith and worry us and cause us concern. What we do is we put it on the shelf. Not in the drawer, not right next to our heart. We put it on the shelf where we ask people what they think about it. And we do a little research. We read what else the Bible has to say, because maybe just a few pages further down, the Bible actually says something which explains that better. Or maybe somebody else has explained it in a wonderful book about that verse, or whatever the deal is. We just hold them. We just hold them on the shelf. And you know what? One by one, they all begin to become clear. And you know what? Some of them might not be clear until you get to heaven, and that's okay. So we don't hide them. We don't bury them in the shelf or drawer. We don't hug them to our chest. We just put them on the shelf. And you know what? With that simple set of rules, it just becomes really easy and fun to understand what God has for us. And so we're going to do it. And I can talk for a long time about this because I'm really excited, but I'm going to wind down now because you all have recovery to do from Christmas and Maderschlopes to get to. What if you could actually know who God is in an incredible way? What if at this time next year, December 31st, 2018, you looked back and went, man, I'm part of that 8%. I'm part of that 8% that actually did it. What if you looked back at that year and go, I never knew God like this. I never understood his plans like I do now. What if Christmas time next year, your joy is overflowing because you understand what God's saying to you and what his will is for your family? What if you look at your spouse and you see him or her the way God sees him or her? What if you could find the keys and the secrets to a healthy relationship, healthy marriage, loving children, joy at work, and health in your own mind, in your own quiet time? And I know I sound like a cheap checkout counter magazine right now, but I'm actually dead serious. This is a real thing that's possible for us. They're peddling cheap tricks, but they're latching on to a true truth, that these things are real. This is what the Bible can do. It can connect you to your Creator. It can guide you into a relationship with a real, loving, just, and grace-filled God. It can draw you close to the source of all that's good, all joy, all love, all forgiveness, no guilt, no shame, no fear, and your true identity. And it can begin this year. For real. The only thing is, it's not the obvious choice. It'll take some time, take some effort, take some willpower, but I think we're up for it. So I'm going to get you to bow your heads right now. We're just going to close in prayer. And Father God, I pray right now that you'd be speaking to our hearts. You'd be building up our courage for this. Lord God, I pray that you'd begin speaking so quickly and dearly to all these people gathered here today, that you would make your word come alive. Lord God, I pray that you would reveal to us the path of life. Lord God, that we could carefully consider the path for our feet. And Lord God, I pray that you would establish us in our ways, in your ways, God. I pray that you would open our eyes, that we would see the world around us the way you do, that we would have a heart that breaks for what breaks yours. We'd have a heart of joy for what brings joy to you, God. We'd have a heart to see our spouses and our kids and our jobs in light of your kingdom principles, God. I pray that nobody who's sitting here today would be left feeling confused, scared, guilt, shame, and loneliness next year. Lord God, I pray for an outpouring of love and fear for your holy word. God, I pray for unity as we do this together as a church, and I thank you that you will speak to us. And I pray all of this in your precious and holy name. Amen.